chatting with Ryan from Little Kings, an American-based indie rock band, and I've just had the pleasure of reviewing their EP. We're just having a chat with Ryan and talking all things music, what the guys have been up to, what's the plans for the future. So, good afternoon, Ryan. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for taking the time to chat to us.
Yeah, the pleasure's mine, Darren. Thanks for giving me the Skype call on short notice. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Not a problem. As I say, it's just, I know with things that's going on around the world at the moment, it's hard for everyone. A lot of people say, yeah, stay safe and be indoors, but guys have got other things going on, and you may have commitments, so I appreciate the time.
Yeah, at least it's easy to get from the bedroom to the office these days, for sure.
Yeah, like a short skateboard ride through the house.
Yep, you got it. That's exactly right.
So how's things been with you guys?
Things are weird, obviously. I mean, as we were just discussing, it's the best laid plans of mice and men, as they say. So we, released the EP Occam's Foil back at the end of 2019, and we just sort of planned for 2020 to be the year of radio and publicity and tons of touring. And we had a bunch of festival dates, set up in the United States, through the spring and summer and then early fall. And of course, February rolled around and early March, and things started to sort of disintegrate from there, unfortunately. So we're all left in a little bit of a holding pattern, but it doesn't, time waits for no one. So we've made use of the time by writing a bunch of new songs and continuing to do some interviews and do some radio and things like that. So there's no good in sitting around, that's for sure. So I've tried to make the best use of time that I possibly could.
Yeah, I think for you guys, it's like, for us reviewing your music, I'll spend 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes poring over your songs and giving my take on it. And then what I do is then I send it off to my boss, and then my boss sends it back to your PR company, and then you guys get it. And then, you go, yeah, sounds about right. I'm not sure. And then for us, we're only putting down what we hear. And you guys have spent months and months in the studio, trying to perfect the songs and get them right. And, and then you put it out there, and guys start coming back with reviews. And you're like, yeah, let's get out there and do it. And then all of a sudden it grinds to a halt. Now, for us, we can still listen to your music, but you guys are sitting there twiddling your thumbs thinking, what can we do? I know that you're writing new music and stuff, which is always, it's your creative side that gets it better, so that your mind can keep ticking over so that you're not sitting still. I must review 6, 8, 10 albums a day, from different bands and different countries all over the world. So my mind is constantly on music all the time, so for you guys it must be difficult.
Well, there's no objective reason to not be, writing at this point. I mean, certainly there's enough fodder in terms of, world happenings and current events and things going on in a personal life that's, in a unique situation. Obviously anybody that's, that's our age has never been in before. So, in terms of having the available time and the available, the available motivation and as I said, some of the fodder for being able to create, there'd be no good excuse to come out of this and not have any good music as far as I'm concerned. So, the history of Little King has been very sporadic. I like to describe it as being sort of consistently inconsistent in that I put a couple albums out the first 2 years that I was active as Little King, but from there it seems like it's spaced out about every 4 or 5 years. But it looks like it's going to be this year, late this year, that we're going to have a new record. And I think it's opportune. It's an opportune time because we've had so much success with the EP, with Occam's Foil, that I think we're going to be striking while the iron's hot. So, I guess it's, out of crisis comes opportunity. And so I guess, that's what I've looked at this as an opportunity.
Of course. And I think that's the thing. It's like, if you sit in your laurels and you may wait till it comes out and see what the kind of the vibe is with it, or you get reviewers, you get bloggers who go, you didn't like it, or this is that, and that may give you a bit of demotivation. So I suppose it's good that you have in your head that you want to keep writing, because you want to keep the momentum going.
That's right.
On the back, you get another album out, and then by the time it comes round to touring, hopefully later end of the year, you'll have lots of material, new stuff as well as old stuff. Your fans will relate to.
It's cool because I've had, this was our 6th release over 23 years, and so I've got so much material in the past, and a lot of it has never seen the light of day because we haven't toured nearly as often as I would have liked to. So now we're in a situation where we can really sort of pick and choose the bits from the old material as well as even the new record, and then upcoming the new material. It'll be fun because it gives us really a lot of diversity, and I probably have 4 hours of music or so that I can play live. So really making sure now as we're sort of reforming the set list that the songs that still speak to me, personally and emotionally, things that I can still relate to. Sometimes, you listen to your songs from 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, and you sort of scratch your head saying, what the hell was I thinking when I wrote that? And then sometimes they're even more relevant, to current modern times than they were even when I wrote them. So it's been really nice to go back and listen and see what still moves me and still, is fun to play. I think that's always a big part of it. I want to be entertained. I want to be entertaining and also be entertained myself as I'm playing. And, your voice changes over time too as a singer. So I'll be 48 here in a month. A lot of the songs I wrote when I was in my 20s and early 30s. And so you go back and you realize maybe that things have changed a little bit. You either got to transpose them or choose a different path vocally. So all of those things, coming together to form a set list, which, as we were getting ready to go out on the road this year, I was really proud of, and I was really excited to present those songs. So I'm sure that sooner rather than later, we'll be able to share that with everybody, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on the EP, I've listened to it 3 or 4 times, and the 2 songs that stick out for me as a personal favourite are "Nerve," which totally I love, and "Skin That I'm In," which is which is a phenomenal song. I don't know if it's possible to say I like every song, or I didn't like any, or only like. Do you know what I mean? So I think when you, as a reviewer, you sit and you listen to it and you think, that sticks in my head. It resonates with me as a person, and I think that's why I've chosen those 2, because when I listened to it, I thought, wow, that's a really good song. It was well put together. The vibe was good. The chords struck well. The pickup was great, and and I think it's just a personal favourite when you say, yeah, this is good or that was good. And I think that's what it is for me as a reviewer. That I give you my honest opinion, and the thing is for me, and myself, you've never met me before, but when someone tells you they like your songs, you can go, well, that's great, or it might mean nothing to you. You might go, yeah, whatever, because I've got so much stuff going on. But for me to take the time to listen to your stuff and then pick out a couple of songs that really mean something to me, it shows that the album was well written.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I think I've been doing this for such a long time now, Darren, that it's when I first started making records, boy, it was incredibly important to be well received to me. And what I came to realize is that certainly, first of all, you can't please everybody, and if you write music for the audience, I think you're in trouble. So what you have to do is you have to obviously compose songs that, as I said, are entertaining to me to play and to sing. And when you're releasing 20 minutes of music, which is sort of what's happening now in my world, it used to be full-length records that were, 9 or 10, even 12 songs long. Time Extension in 1998 was almost an hour worth of music. Well, that's just not the way things are these days for a lot of bands. And so what I try to do is make a statement within, 20 minutes, which is what Outcome Spoil is, about 20 minutes long. So to me, I want to make music that entertains me to listen to, and I just hope that the audience feels the same way. So I think within those 5 songs, there's a lot of diversity. I think it still sounds like Little King. I mean, it's hard for me to sound like somebody else. I'm sort of set in my ways to a certain extent, but I would like to think that, through the course of those 4 or 5 songs in those 20 minutes, that we're touching on a lot of different points in terms of musicality and genres and influences, and that, it's great that you're able to pick out a couple songs. Those are, those 2 songs, the instrumental Nerve Number 8 was a blast. to record. It's always nice to make one instrumental so I don't have to worry about blowing my vocal cords out when we play it live. It gives me a little chance to concentrate a little more on playing guitar and less, having to worry about, coming in on cue and things like and singing in tune, of course, as well. But, certainly I think The Skin That I'm In is the one that has resonated the most with people. That seems to be the most personal song, certainly for me, in terms of the lyrical content, as well as something that, bringing in a string arrangement for that, and also really letting myself take a long guitar solo, which I don't always necessarily do, but that one's a long one, and I ripped that in one take, which was cool. I didn't have to go back and punch in or do anything like that. I said, Eddie, the engineer, just said, hey, why don't you go ahead and take one? And boom, I took one, and then that was it. And we put a wrap on it and went out and had some Mexican food after. So I'm proud of that song. I'm proud of the whole album, but certainly The Skin That I'm In, I think, is the one that people like you, Darren, have really latched onto. And that certainly is gratifying to me to know that, maybe we did something right with that song for sure.
Yeah. Because possibly people might say, oh yeah, the 5 songs are really great. But, when someone picks a song that, that the band member, the singer, songwriter, the lyricist go, yeah, that's the one we take most pride in, that speaks volumes for me and obviously for you guys in the band. Someone's listening to that, listening to the lyrics, listening to the words and the pickups and going, yeah, that's a really good song, rather than saying, yeah, there's 5 songs on it and 5 of them are okay. You would maybe come away from that and think 5 songs, I've my arse into that, and you've just turned around and said it's okay. Do you know what I mean? So that's a personal thing for me, that I take time to listen to the stuff and then think what would make me tick. And as I say, Skin That I'm In hit the mark big time for me. So congratulations, and tell the guys that as well, that obviously that pod, and and as I say, it was a really good EP to listen to. Where did the name Occam's Foil come from? Is there any particular reason for the name of the CD?
Absolutely. So there's an old theory, a philosophy. It's called Occam's razor. It actually originated in the UK. So there was a gentleman. I guess he was a gentleman. I didn't know him because it was 700 years ago. But in the 1300s, his name was Father William of Occam, which I guess is an area in Surrey. And so his philosophy has lasted throughout, last 700 years, as I said, and it basically is the simplest answer is typically the correct one. Absent of extenuating circumstances or absent of additional information or additional testing, his theory was the simplest answer is almost always the correct one. Well, I think that's all well and good in certain circumstances. And I know it's used in medical diagnoses quite a bit. You go into the doctor's office and you have a cold. You're sneezing and you're coughing. You probably have a cold, right? So you probably don't have COVID-19, or you probably don't have tuberculosis. But who knows? Maybe you do. So I think it's practical, Occam's razor, to a certain extent. But in literature and in theater and in cinema, the foil to anything is the counter argument. The foil to the plot is something that sort of disrupts it. So to me, I think the philosophy of Occam's razor can be very detrimental to us as a society. I think it can discourage deeper thought. I think it can discourage more investigation. When you just take something at face value and say, oh, that's the simplest answer, that's probably what's going on, I think that can lead to a lot of problems. And each song on the EP presents that argument, that counter argument, the foil, in a different way. So Hate Counter has sort of a political bent to it, whereas some of the other songs deal with relationships and deal with even social media and the opioid crisis in this country. So I would like to think that people should think more deeply, have more conversations with people who don't necessarily agree with them, listen to some divergent opinions, do a little more investigation. It seems like in the age of social media now, the loudest voice is the one that typically gets the most attention, rather than one that's perhaps the most knowledgeable or the most informed. So it's the general theme of my music, is getting people to maybe listen again, put a little deeper thought, maybe slow it down a little bit, spend a little more time thinking about what the band's singing and playing and how those compositions were put together. I would say with Little King music, and with this record in particular, the simplest answer isn't the correct answer. Rather, I think it bears a little closer examination. And I think if you can extrapolate that and take that and apply that philosophy, the counter philosophy to Occam's razor, I think we'd probably all be in a little better spot, particularly with what's going on, in the world today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's a crazy time for everyone, I think, and I think you're right that sometimes it takes a little bit of so a little bit of extra thought, stand back a little bit, and and maybe take someone else's view rather than thinking my view is the only view, let's get on with it, So I think that's you're probably right, because I think that you're right when people go, yeah, I've got the loudest voice, and let's take, for instance, Mr. Trump, let's take, for instance, Boris Johnson, where they go, yeah, this is what you do. Well, yeah, let's sit and listen to him. Sometimes it's wrong, and I think people make their own informed choices as to the right way or the wrong way or the best way or the worst way to get around a situation,
Sure.
And
well, in this country, that's what's going on here. And I mean, I'm pretty open with my politics and how I feel about, the current administration in this country. And, I'm certainly familiar with Boris Johnson and Brexit and all that stuff. You'd have to have your head in the sand and not, know what's been going on over there. And I think a lot of Americans are very egocentric and Americentric, so they probably don't have an idea. But I like to consider myself well informed, and I do a lot of reading, but I do try and consider divergent opinions. And I'm not a fan of the current administration here. There are a lot of things that I could wax on and on about in terms of what I don't agree with. But there are certain things and certain philosophies that I do agree with that they espouse, currently. And so you can't paint everything with a broad brush. You have to be nuanced. You have to approach each argument, unto itself. And if you start to just sort of take that simple way out, that simple answer, and say, well, I can't stand Donald Trump, therefore everything he says I'm going to disagree with. Well, you're not doing yourself any good. You're certainly not doing anybody else any good too. Do I approve of the man? Absolutely not. But are there things that he espouses and things that he discusses? In certain instances, he talks about trade with China. And I don't know, Darren, how it is in the UK, but in the United States, we've been taken advantage of by the Chinese for a long time. They own the supply chain as goods come and go, the world, but particularly the United States. And so Trump's saying, hey, listen, we've been in debt to China for way too long. They take advantage of us. They steal our intellectual property. Well, shit. I mean, he talks about intellectual property. I'm a musician. That speaks to me when you talk about intellectual property. So again, I don't agree with most of the things that he espouses and most of his philosophies, but I can't say that I disagree with everything he says. And I wish people could slow things down a little bit, let the arguments present themselves, do a little independent research, and not listen to the guy with the megaphone, the guy that's screaming and shouting the loudest and making the most outrageous statements. What happened to a time when we were kids, when you and I were younger, where the respected voices were the ones of knowledge, the one with an educated background, the ones that had a breadth and depth of experience, rather than the guy that could just stand on the soapbox at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park and bang on his chest. I don't think that's where we need to be at this point in time.
No. I think it's, I think fix the problem and then, do the autopsy afterwards, because I think at the moment, with the current state of the world, with everyone, not just America, not just Britain, everyone, the world is going to a halt, and you can't get out of it unless you try and figure out the problem, and I think like us, like you, for like musicians, and us, like me, like reviewers, that I think I'll probably forego about 60 gigs this year, 70 gigs this year, that I'll go into review and see and interview folk, and that's a massive big thing. So you could wax lyrical about relax the rules and let's get out there and do it. But I think it's first of all about being safe, get everybody safe, and then look at opening small venues and getting guys out there and getting live music back on the circuit. Because I think that's I think so. You guys do. You get in the studio for months to make music, to get it out there for people hear and like you, rather than sitting at the home with the speakers on, just listen to your stuff going, yeah, you guys have taken time to make it, so you want to get out there and play it. But I guess everyone's like, we can't do anything, stay still, don't go out, don't do anything, and then let's sort the problem, let's get a way around it, and then let's make music and let's get out and do it. And I think that's the hard thing, especially for you guys, if you when you can't get together. Say like at the moment, the big thing at the moment is guys doing online gigs. Unfortunately, be you with your guitar doing 5 songs, not the rest of the guys, or it be, I've done about 7 or 8 so far, but I've done them online and I've reviewed them, and it's maybe the guitarist doing his thing with his electric guitar and a backing track, and he gets 1,000 people
Yeah, I'm not interested. I don't want to do that. That's not me. I like to play with my band, and it's a performance to me, Darren. And sure, I'm sure I can be entertaining, and people would appreciate the songs in an acoustic format with me singing. But this will be the first time that I've played these new songs live, and even some of the older ones. And I don't want to give them short shrift. I want them to be presented and performed in the way in which they were originally intended to be performed. And furthermore, I try to be as humble as I can, man. I don't think I'm that entertaining. Maybe 5 or 10 minutes playing guitar in front of my computer. People might tune in, but I don't really. It's not particularly entertaining for me to watch other people do it unless they're just incredibly talented and diverse. And so I don't want to bore anybody. I don't want to seem to be come off as being so pretentious that I think that people actually be interested in watching me for more than 3 to 5 minutes. And so I have judiciously avoided the solo, heartfelt acoustic guitar performance from my office. It's not who I am, man, and I don't want to try and pretend to be something that I'm not.
You want to do the band thing, and I think that's important that you stick to your guns and do what you feel's right, and do what you want to do rather than following the lead of everyone. Let's jump on the bandwagon. Let's do a 25-minute, set, and let's put a GoFundMe page. And it means that I can still get some money while I'm waiting on the COVID pandemic to ease. I can get in the road. So some people like it, some people don't. And I applaud you for wanting to stay true to yourself and do your thing and get out there and do it live. And I appreciate that.
Part of that experience too, as you well know, because you see so many shows. There's no replication for a live performance, no matter what. I mean, I watch DVDs and watch YouTube videos of my favorite bands, and it's all well and good, and they sound great. But that trade of energy between audience and performer, it's an intangible thing, but it's as real as anything that you could ever imagine. Yeah. And the feedback that you get from being in front of someone and making eye contact with someone in the first 5 rows or 10 rows, the feeling of being on stage and being able to look at each other, walking that tightrope, the tension that comes with performing something live. And I think it's akin to, watching a movie versus watching theater, seeing a live performance in theater. There's always that possibility for a massive train wreck in theater. Someone drops a line or knocks a prop over, something like that. And the tension that results in that, it gives a different experience to the audience. And I think, it's very similar to live music performance. So, God bless everybody that's doing they're looking into the camera and doing their thing. It's just probably not going to be my gig, man. And I'll make no apologies for not wanting to bore people. So there you go.
So what about the rest of the guys? How are they coping, and what are they doing to fill the time while all this is going on? Are you keeping in constant touch? Are you bouncing ideas off each other? Yeah.
So I just saw the bass player, Manny, for the first time in about 6 weeks, because we've basically been locked down, since early March. So Manny actually came over today. I literally hadn't seen him, and he's my best friend here. And I live in the East Coast, the United States. And so in this area, he's my best friend. So we miss each other, man. And, we maintain our 6 foot of distance, and, we've both been quarantined. So I think we're probably both healthy, but I have these new songs, and I've been sending him the songs over, sending him short little video snippets. But again, there's no substitute for being in the same room and saying, hey, check this out, watch this diminished riff. Yeah. Let's do the ascension here, making the eye contact. So, he's a bartender and a waiter and runs a restaurant. And so he's been locked down because his restaurant's closed. Eddie Garcia is the drummer, and Eddie lives in El Paso, Texas. So he's 2,000 miles away from us. And, Eddie runs live sound. He's on the road all the time. He owns a studio. And of course, his business has been shut down to zero as well. He has no, none of us have had any income for a while. So we're sort of looking at each other going, saying, good grief, when is this going to end? But, I think we all, as you were saying before, we understand that, I'm an expert in some things. Immunology and virology and pandemics I'm not an expert in. So I think I'm going to leave that, to the best guesses of the scientists and the people who've been doing this for as long as I've been alive. And if someone wants to talk about, chord progressions and lyrical assonance and alliteration and metaphors and things like that, I'm happy to wax on and on about that. But I'm going to let those people make the decisions. And certainly we're ready to get back. And, the three of us are chomping at the bit to do it. But, you just got to stay patient. And I think, that's a place we're at. Although I'll say, The weather was nice here today. I don't know what the weather's like where you are. I assume it's very similar to kind of what we're going through. But when the sun comes out here, in the last couple of weeks, people are sort of starting to look at each other, and I think it's going to be hard to keep people in much longer. I think people are starting to get pretty restless. So we'll see what happens.
Whereabouts are you, Ryan? Are you New York or Washington? What side are you on?
Yeah, I'm actually in Delaware, which is a small
Delaware.
little
Yeah.
second smallest state in the United States. Actually, there are only 3 counties in the state of Delaware. I grew up in Seattle, so I grew up in Washington State, where Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains all came from. Those guys are a little bit
Yeah.
older than me, but not much. So I grew up there, and I lived in Texas for a long time, in Arizona. I was born in California, and I lived there again, off and on for the last 15 years. I've been there, but been in Delaware for the past 6 years. So it's a nice place. It's small and quiet, kind of a rural community. I live about 10 minutes from the ocean. So right across the pond from you, about 10 minutes from my house is the Atlantic Ocean. So I'm here, and it's an interesting place, Darren, because it's equidistant from a lot of big cities in the United States. So I'm about 2 hours from Philadelphia, about 2 hours from Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and about 3 hours from Manhattan, from New York City. So while we're pretty isolated and rural, we're also fairly close to a lot of big cities, which is great for touring, because you could go 2 hours here, 3 hours there, and there are 5 major cities, right there that you can hit. So that's where I live, but I'm a West Coast kid, man. I grew up in Seattle, and I'm a California kid. So even after 6 years out on the East Coast, it's still a little bit of an adjustment to me. I'm a little more laid back, maybe a little more hippie trippy than most of my friends out here. A little more peace and love, but what are you going to do? You just got to kind of roll with it. So.
I've got a friend of mine, obviously from Seattle, Jeff Tate.
Yeah. I know Jeff a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got a friend in Texas, a boy called Stephen Heyman from the Glasgow band Heavy Petting.
Oh,
he
yeah.
lives in Texas.
Absolutely.
And I've got a friend.
Jeff grew up. Jeff Tate and Chris DeGarmo grew up about 10 minutes from me. So they, as I recall, they're from a suburb of Seattle called Bellevue. And I grew up on Mercer Island, which is little island in Lake Washington. It's about, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes from Bellevue. So again, those guys were older than me. I think Jeff's probably, 8 or 10 years older than me. But I grew up there in the 80s and the 70s. So, Queensryche was one of the first modern bands to come out of Seattle. Certainly, Queen of the Reich, I think, what's that, early 80s, probably 81 or 82. And Mindcrime and all that was late 80s. So those guys, were before Soundgarden, Nirvana, Pearl Jam. They and Heart were kind of the two Seattle bands as I was growing up that sort of everybody looked up to. And I've met Jeff and Chris a couple times. I'm sure they wouldn't remember me, but that's cool that you know them, because they were great guys. Even back then, they were really personable and nice and didn't carry around any attitude at all, man. I'm a big Queensryche fan, Jet City Woman, all that stuff. I definitely dig that. That's cool.
Next time I'm chatting to him, I'll drop your name in there and see if he remembers.
Yeah. Yeah, hey man, I remember you. Yeah, for sure I will.
So what's the next step for you guys then? I'm obviously conscious of your time, Ryan, so I'm gonna round it down for you. What's next for you guys at the moment? So you waiting for lockdown and then get back to the studio, or are you trying to get out on the road before the end of the year, or is it waiting to next year? Or?
Great question. So we've got a couple major features coming out and some international press, which I'm really excited about. I can't really say anything yet, but it's two of the biggest publications in the world are going to be featuring us in the next 4 weeks. So that's really exciting to me. I've been at this a long time, and it's probably the biggest press that I've ever received. So that, in conjunction with a massive commercial radio campaign, we charted at 150, in the top 150 in college radio this year for the last 8 weeks. So a really good run. There's really been good reception of this album. So we're taking it to commercial radio, and that in combination with this national press that's happening, I'm thinking it's going to take us to a level that we haven't been to before. So, we'd love to go on the road, certainly open for some bigger bands, Darren, but everything is canceled. We don't know. So to me, I know what I do, best is the things that I can control and not worrying about the things that I can't control. And what I can control is finishing these 7 new songs and getting my ass in the studio. We've got a couple producers. One guy by the name of Ron St. Germain, who's been around forever, and he lives near me. He's a friend of mine. So Ron and I talked about making a record. He's done everything. He did Bad Brains. He's done, he worked with Soundgarden. He's worked with U2. I mean, Ron's been around forever, and he lives in New Jersey, which is not too far from me. So I may end up making a record with Ron, which would be super cool. So that looks like it's next, Darren. I mean, I'd love to say we're going on the road and going to stay on the road, but for all intents and purposes, until I know what's up, we're just going to make more music, record it, and then throw it to the wind and see what happens. So
I guess that what you were saying just 2 seconds ago about your big airplay, from the commercial stations and stuff, may open you up to bigger support slots, or with bigger bands, which, in this current climate may be a good thing. That that you put it out, you're getting lots of airplay, you're getting lots of coverage, and people might go, yeah, I remember that band, let's get them on tour. So that it could be a blessing in disguise that you're doing, you're getting covered. And I hope that when you get the coverage, that you remember me and you'll email me and tell me all about it.
Yeah,
because I'll put it on a GH Media, and we'll cover you Britain and Europe wide. So when it breaks, please remember, stick it on my email, and I'll get you out there.
Yeah, no, you have my word that no matter what happens when we come over there, I'll sit down and have a cup of coffee or whatever it is that we do, and make sure that we. I think it'll be safe. I think it'll be safe to shake hands and give a big bro hug by then. So definitely do
the
elbows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ryan, it was an absolute pleasure to chat to you. I really appreciate your time.
Sure.
Let's keep in touch. If you get anything, drop me a line on my email address, and we can chat some more. I'll be getting this compressed tonight, and it will probably be on the website, possibly tomorrow, possibly Friday, and it will go to all the major players. So everyone will see the interview with you and I, waxing lyrical about the music business and all the rest of it, and it'll get out there. And as soon as it comes, I'll let you know that it's on, and I'll give you the website address, and you can go check it out, and then share it with your fan base and take it to the next level.
We do. We'll definitely do it, man. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You take care. Okay. Stay safe.
You too, Darren. Be well.